Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the YouTube audiobook series for The Forbidden Truth, written by Abby Matthias. I am Darius, and today I will be introducing Chapter 25. If you missed Chapter 24, links in the description below along with the playlist, and if you are all caught up and ready to go, we will continue on with Chapter 25, Basic Understanding.
As Darius and Nala moved out of sight, I turned myself to Damien to see his expression. His eyes were slightly wide, while a smile appeared on his face. His hand was intertwined with mine, while he stayed motionless. However, I knew he had a lot of questions for me to answer. So as I heard Nala's bedroom door close and lock, I turned myself to my boyfriend and placed my hand upon his cheek. He instantly turned to me and pulled me in for a hug. His tight embrace surrounded my body and squeezed me enough to ensure I was within his grasp. I wanted to know what he was thinking. Was he mad that I never told him I was paired with a demon who was, ironically enough, his missing father? Was he confused as to how this was even happening? Or was he joyous that somehow his girlfriend held more of a meaning to him now? I needed to understand so I could wash away this anxiety that I was feeling. However, before I could ask him anything, he spoke first.
I am guessing you know that I have questions to ask you. So let's talk privately like my parents are doing, and head back to my room.
I nodded my head in agreement, and was soon led by Damien again to the basement. Upon entering his bedroom, I immediately sat myself onto the bed while he closed his door. Then, once it was, he leaned against it and faced his head towards me with a baffled face.
I have no words to explain what I'm feeling. All I know is that my dad is somehow a demon because he signed a contract with the devil in order to save me from my cancer.
I know, sweetheart. I can't even imagine being in your shoes right now.
Well, I can say the same to you. You've been with him for a year, according to him.
I've been paired with him since April 22nd of last year. Yet I didn't find out until now that he was your dad. He's talked about you and all, but because you were using your mom's maiden name, we couldn't put the pieces together. After that statement, he gathered himself up again and walked over to the bed to sit next to me.
He's talked about me?
He asked, finally situating himself. Almost constantly. Yes, him and I have our own conversations, but there were a lot of times where he would bring up you and your mom. He's missed you both dearly, Damien, and I hope you know that.
I'm sure he has, but I'm not worried about his side of things. At least not yet. I want to hear things from your point of view.
Well, I'll tell you anything you want. I just need to know where you want me to start.
Start wherever you want, Abby. I ask about anything if I get confused or curious. But the main question I would like to know is how you have been able to keep this all a secret.
It's been extremely hard, Damien, I said, finding some relief finally being able to say something to him. There has been so much that has happened between us. When I first found out about Darius, I was scared out of my mind. There was a random demon who kept claiming to be my protector demon. That alone was hard for me to grasp because of my religious aspect. Yet over time, I have realized that he wasn't like the stereotype I was taught to fear.
How did my dad react to you?
He was confused just as I was. Not to mention the fact that when we met, it was under very bizarre circumstances.
What do you mean? How did you meet him?
Remember the day we were supposed to hang out with Scarlet, and I called you saying that I couldn't make it suddenly because of a family meetup?
Yeah. I ended up going to dinner with Scarlet by myself. It was terrible.
Well, I was in cosplay earlier that day when suddenly I blacked out. Yet, when I came back to my senses, he began to talk in my head and was able to show himself to me.
And that's why you canceled? Because you thought you were having a mental breakdown?
No, it wasn't just that. The reason why I blacked out was because of us making contact with each other, even though I couldn't see him. Besides the point, more chaos broke out as I learned that fact the hard way, by pushing him in anger. From there, we both blacked out and we somehow switched bodies. At that moment, Damien's eyes went wide while his eyebrows furrowed in confusion.
Wait a minute. You are able to switch bodies with my father? He can be in your body?
Yes. I know it may be hard to believe, but there were times where you have interacted with him while he was in control of my body.
When? Can you give me one instance if you can't give me all of them?
The very first one was when I called you canceling that friend meetup. We had to make up an excuse, so I told him what he had to say. But the other significant one I can think of when he was in my body was the night you called and asked me out on a date without signifying what it was. I muted the phone to talk to Darius and not to my mom. But during that silent time, he abruptly switched with me in order to set up the date with you.
He was the one that agreed to it?
Yes, because I was nervous too. But looking back upon it, I am so happy that he knocked me off my straight and narrow path and widened the way. Please don't think of our relationship as a sham. I am happy that your father was there to talk some sense into me to form this love I have for you.
I don't think that.
Damien said, looking away.
I just couldn't see the difference between you two.
You wouldn't have been able to even if I told you about it. He still would have appeared and sounded like me regardless. I don't know if that would change if we were to switch now, but that is besides the point. I'm sorry that I didn't tell you about him. I just figured you would consider me nuts and not believe me.
I understand why you didn't. I'm just trying to understand everything.
Another silence filled the air as things fell quiet. I understood that he was perplexed and curious as to what has happened within the past year, yet that entire timeline was a long story to tell. It would take more than one day to tell. But that was besides the point. As we sat silently within his room, I suddenly heard a thought pop into my head.
You need to stop yourself, Darius. This love is forbidden, and you know it. Plus, you don't want to get your wife pregnant or infect her with some hellish disease. You don't deserve her anyway. She's too pure for you.
I'm assuming you have never seen him as his human self.
Damien added shortly after that thought. Before I could react to hearing my protector demon's thought for the first time ever, I responded to my boyfriend asking me a question. Maybe once, but I don't know if I could consider it his human self. To be honest, I don't know what I saw. I would have to see a picture of him to be sure if it was him or not.
My mom keeps the spare photos down here in the storage closet. They are in a large cardboard box. I'll try and see if I can find a good picture of him from when I was young. I'll be right back.
From there, he quickly got up and exited the room again. I stayed behind, wanting to respond to Darius's thought. If he was thinking that particular thought, things must have been getting heated between them two. Yet, what threw me off the most was the fact that he was calling the love between him and his wife forbidden now. I mean, yes, she was human and he was a demon, but that shouldn't have mattered. Darius didn't care about loving Nala before. Yet when it comes to the natural feelings he was telling me about, he is now jumping backwards. This couldn't happen. If he pushed me out of my comfort zone getting with Damien, then I was going to do the same for him when it came to this situation. So getting up from my spot, I went over to Damien's sock drawer and found his box of condoms. I grabbed one out of the packaging and held the singular item within my hand. I had to send it up to Darius somehow without interrupting anything or making Damien uncomfortable about the fact his parents were about to have sex. Thinking about it briefly, I managed to come up with the solution. Using my intangibility, I surrounded the condom within the power bubble and tossed it through the ceiling. I waited a moment to see if it was going to return back down to me, but it didn't. Eventually, I heard the heavy tread of my demon's footsteps heading towards where I threw it. So knowing that, I had a quick conversation within my head about it, which I will not repeat as you probably already know how that went. Once our discussion came to an end, Damien came back with a picture in his hand.
This was from my 3rd birthday. Again, I lived in New York then, so the atmosphere was different.
With the picture extended to me, I grabbed it out of his hand and brought it up to my face to view the memory. As what my boyfriend described, it was his birthday, and he was sitting in a chair while his parents squatted to his sides. Nala was on the left side with her wavy blonde hair, while Darius was on the right. Now, of course, as I was comparing the two beings against each other, I couldn't take the clothes into consideration. I could still make the connection that they were wearing formal attire. However, looking at the picture, he was wearing an orange button-up and black pants. Yet, concentrating on the facial features more, I was able to confirm my thoughts. The demon spirit that I viewed on June 26th of 2021 was the same man I saw in the picture. Except this time, I was able to prove my predictions about him to be right. He had black square glasses, black hair that formed a neat and poofy comb-over, and powerful ocean blue eyes. "You definitely have your dad's eyes," I said. I mean, not his current ones, but the ones he used to have. Ocean blue. Not only that, but comparing you two more, I can see a lot of resemblances.
Why do you think I said that I looked a lot like him? It's crazy how genetics work.
He stated with a chuckle. I gave the picture back to Damien, and he immediately went back to return it to its rightful place. As he was out of the room, I suddenly heard a loud creak of the floor sound and grew confused as to what the hell it was. Yet as I wondered, my vision wavered and displayed a visual of what was currently happening. I saw Nala was on top of Darius, with her shirt off. She was panting slightly as her hair hung to her shoulders. She almost looked devilish as a smirk appeared on her face and a glimmer shined in her eyes. "I think it's time I explore your body. Do you mind?" she asked towards my demon. Immediately upon that, my vision faded, and I found my cheeks to be flushed. That was a sight that I didn't want to see, or ever see again. I mean, good for Darius, but this moment scarred me a bit, knowing I saw Damien's mom without a shirt on. Yet disregarding that fact, I suddenly gained the knowledge that things were going south in the room above me. Soon there would be nothing but incoherent noises and moans seeping through the floor, and I knew I had to leave before things got that far. As I exited the room and closed the door behind me, Damien came back, looking confused.
Why are you leaving my room? Do you need to go to the bathroom again or something?
"No!" I exclaimed with slight panic. "No, I am fine. I just think it would be better if we talked out here instead of in your room. It might be easier to concentrate and ask questions without the creaking of the floor." He then gave me a suspicious look and responded.
Okay, sure, if that's what you want.
We then made our way to the couch and sat to get comfortable. Damien turned on the TV that was mounted onto the wall and began to turn on some instrumental music to fill the air. I don't know if he did that because he caught onto my drift, or if he was trying to calm himself from what he was learning. Regardless of that, after he was done, he began to ask questions again.
May I ask a more personal question?
If you would like to, go ahead.
Did my dad truly protect you when I wasn't around? Was there ever a time he actually had to protect you?
Well, the sad truth is that he has protected me physically within the human world. The first time he protected me, he broke up with my ex-boyfriend and managed to run away from him. Your dad was only paired with me for 4 days at that point and didn't really know what he was doing. But after the first slap, he forced a switch between us and took appropriate action to save me from Chad's rage.
So my dad has been like a hero to you?
He asked, becoming slightly emotional. Yes, he's been more than that to me. Throughout time, we have connected and bonded with each other. I don't just see him as a demon. I see him as a father to me as well. He wears his heart on his sleeve and has done nothing but care for me since the first day. Yeah, it didn't show well for the first few months, but because of everything we have been through and what we have done for each other, we were able to find solid ground and created a wonderful father-daughter relationship. Your dad is honestly amazing, Damien. And I can see the same characteristics that he has within you. You two are truly alike, and I couldn't have asked for better men to have within my life. Upon my response, Damien then began to lay himself on my chest as I leaned back onto the armrest. His arms wrapped around my body and caressed my back.
I'm sorry.
He said, softly choking on his words.
I just can't believe this is all happening and that my father is just as I remember. I can't even begin to say how much I am thankful that he was paired with you. Because of this, you have brought our family back together in a way, and I can't praise you enough for it. Thank you, Abby. I love you.
I love you too, I said gently while placing a kiss upon his head. Small but subtle sobs escaped Damien's body, and my heart began to sink. I knew he was crying tears of joy, yet I still felt bad that he was feeling vulnerable and weak. All I found myself doing was brushing his hair with my fingers as the minutes passed. However, I eventually remembered a certain tune that I figured I could sing to help strengthen his self-confidence and comfort him overall. So taking in a deep breath, I began to sing Damien's lullaby. Stand tall, little one, you are never alone. Be brave, be strong, you can conquer all. When the skies are gray, no, they'll go away. With a clear mind, you can solve your bind. If I am not there by your side, just remember this lullaby. Stand tall, little one, you are never alone. Be brave, be strong, you can conquer all. Keep your head held high, wipe those tears goodbye. Act in decency, even towards your enemy. When no one seems to pick your side, just remember this lullaby. Stand tall, little one, you are never alone. Be brave, be strong, you can conquer all. If you do feel lost, know it's at no cost. Light will guide the way when you think before you say. Just remember this lullaby and know that I am by your side.
You know the lullaby,
Damien said, now calmer than ever. I do. He has sang it to me a couple times. He's told me you wouldn't go to bed without it when he was alive.
Yeah, I was young and naive. That lullaby was like treasure to me growing up. I held it close to my heart, even after he disappeared. But I'm happy that he used it for you. I hope you find the same amount of comfort and calmness it brings me.
I do, Damien. I do. At that point, my boyfriend and I just cuddled on the couch until Darius called us within my head. It was around 1:45 p.m. when he summoned us back up into the living room, which was perfectly fine. That gave everyone enough time to confess their sins to their partners. Yet more of the brutal truth was to be revealed. Not every question was answered within our half an hour of being separated. Yet as we were all meeting in the living room, I assumed more of the hard truth was going to come out. So as I told Damien that his father called for us, he questioned me briefly.
That's weird. I didn't hear him call for us.
Oh, right. Well, you wouldn't be able to if he communicated with me within the head.
Wait, you can actually talk to him through your head?
He said, amazed. Yeah, it was kind of weird at first, but as time went on, it became very useful. He told me we could meet him and Nala upstairs to talk.
Oh, okay. Then let's not keep them waiting.
From there, Damien and I made our way up the stairs and entered the living room. As we made our entrance, I seen both Darius and Nala practically glowing with love and happiness. My demon had his wife wrapped within his left arm while he had a smirk upon his face. I was extremely happy for both of them, yet I knew what truly happened between them. So placing a smirk on my face as well, he spotted my expression and cleared his throat. He then unwrapped his arm and placed it at his side as we finally came into view. From there, Darius spoke out first.
I'm hoping that everyone can agree and say that we need to talk as a family. And before you say anything, Abby, you are a part of it regardless of your blood relation.
My eyes widened as my lips pressed together a bit. To be honest, I wasn't expecting him to say that. I already knew I had to be a part of the conversation. Yet it was the fact that he was calling me a part of his family, even though we were nowhere near related. Yet regardless of my reaction, my protector demon continued talking.
I think the best setup for this would be if you two sit by each other while Abby and I stand.
He stated, talking to his wife and son.
That way we don't risk any injuries involving people fainting, if that even happens. So Nala and Damien, pick a spot wherever, and we will stand adjacent to it.
At the request, both my boyfriend and his mother walked over to the middle couch and sat side by side. As for Darius, he walked next to me and placed his hands upon my back to guide us to our designated position, which ended up being in the center of the room. Once all of us were situated, Nala started off the conversation. So, just so we all have a basic understanding of knowledge, let me just summarize what you've already told us. You, Darius, were tricked into making a deal with the devil in order to save Damien's life. However, after 13 years, you somehow have been sent to protect Abby and have been doing so for the past year. I nodded my head in agreement to her statement while my demon responded.
Yes. My life was somehow taken, and I was forced to be Satan's dealmaker. Then after all those years, I was suddenly given a job transfer that led me to being what I am currently, a protector demon.
And you two can talk to each other in the head.
Damien chimed in.
Yes, we can. By being paired with Abby, there are supernatural abilities that I have gained in order to do my job properly.
Like the switching you two can apparently do.
Immediately upon his question, Nala looked at us confused and raised an eyebrow. Wait, pause. I don't know about that. What does that mean? Switching what? Well, I said, willing to answer this question. There are points in time where Darius had to inhabit my body and walk around as me. For example, early last year when I was with Chad, he switched to protect me. My ex grew very violent, and in order to save me from his abuse, he switched and physically defended my body. With that response out in the open, Damien and Nala both blankly stared at us as if we were nuts. However, I knew they were trying to comprehend exactly what they were being told.
We already broke them, Abby.
Darius said, touching my shoulder. I'm sorry. I already told Damien while you and your wife were occupied. I was just trying to answer his question and clarify it. You don't need to apologize, Nala said, intruding on the sidebar Darius and I were having. It's just, I don't quite get that switching thing. How does that even work? Does that mean you are not conscious when he inhabits it? Or what happens to you when he takes control of your human body?
Wouldn't it be easier if you showed us what you meant?
Damien asked. Immediately I turned my head to see Darius's reaction in response.
Hold the brakes for a moment,
he said, putting his hands up.
I don't want to jump the gun right away here and complicate things more. If you both can agree that you want to see it, then fine. I'm not against doing it. But you need to know that she also has a demon body as well. A vessel that allows her to walk in the demon world, and the very spirit that allows us to switch with each other.
At that moment, I turned my head back to Damien to see he was nodding his head purposely, while Nala slowly did so. She appeared more hesitant than her son. However, at their agreement, Darius and I faced each other and grabbed a hold of each other's forearms.
You ready?
He asked gently. Yeah, let her rip, I replied back, closing my eyes. So upon that, I felt the energy build within my chest after a brief moment. I acknowledged that the switch was going to happen soon, yet as the energy built up, I felt extremely weak and wobbly to the point I collapsed to the ground. My mind became fuzzy, yet I never fully passed out. Darius! I heard a voice cry.
Abby!
Said another voice. At that, I tried to sit myself up again to see what the hell happened. However, upon doing so, I unexpectedly felt hands grabbing my arm and shoulder, guiding me upward. My head began to pound from, I assume, hitting it on the floor. I groaned in pain for a moment, trying to gain my bearings again. Yet, as I was, Nala spoke. Darius, honey, are you okay? What happened? She sounded like she was right next to my ear. Yet as I was able to open my eyes and see, I saw Nala staring up at me with fright. At the result, I immediately lifted my left arm up to see that I was once again in my demon's body. Realizing that, I peered across from me to find my demon body sitting up, with Damien's help. Eventually, it made eye contact with me and displayed frustration instead of confusion.
You have got to be kidding me!
Darius said, not being able to control his voice. Even though we wanted to switch with each other, it switched us in a different way. His power of possession had taken hold again while my human body lay to the left of me.
What? What's wrong, Abby?
Damien said, grabbing my hand. Darius immediately stared at Damien in shock while Nala spoke out. Can someone please explain what happened and why Abby's body is laying on the floor?
Mrs. Stone,
I said, still trying to shake off the feeling of perplexity.
I'm not your husband. He is in my demon body. The switch didn't work properly.
At my remark, I turned my head back to her and saw her eyes instantly staring into mine with bewilderment. Wait a minute. Are you telling me that—
Nala.
Darius said, speaking up.
Abby is possessing my body. I'm over here. I'm sorry to confuse you more. Dad?
Damien said with the same amount of confusion as Nala. He slowly let go of my body's hand and just stared with curiosity.
Not only can you control her human body, but you can control her demon one as well? Ultimately, yes. But this isn't something that I willingly do.
Well, you must have had some willingness if it switched you two like this.
Not exactly. This would be considered a power malfunction, an ability that he doesn't have control over yet, so sometimes it acts upon its own will. He only gained the power of possession in February, if I remember correctly, and hasn't used it at all. The first time it acted up, the same thing happened.
When it comes to possession, I gain the qualities and characteristics of my host. That's why you can't tell us apart. When we switch normally, our voices stay with us. I'm assuming because you can see me that if our normal switch would have happened, you would hear my voice come out of her body. So is her actual body just sleeping? Yes, but in order for someone to take control over it, we have to be in our designated vessels. We can't inhabit it if we are like this.
So then you need to switch back.
We have to touch each other again and hope it works.
Well, if you attempt to switch, please stay seated. I don't want either of you falling again.
Yes, Mrs. Stone. We will stay seated.
After that, we all scooted together while Darius and I grabbed forearms again. Then once again, after a few seconds, the energy formed in my chest, and I was jolted back. Opening my eyes this time, I was facing Darius, and Damien was along my side. I nodded my head to my demon, symbolizing I was all right. He did the same and spoke out.
Okay. Again, I'm sorry that happened instead of what was supposed to happen. So to ensure we can tell the difference, I'm going to fuse into her body to show you what the initial intent was.
Without anyone saying a word, Darius did as he said and touched my ankle. Upon contact, his entire body glowed red, and he became a streak of energy that flowed into my body. Once he was gone, my body began to slightly groan and move as Darius began to pick himself up. I helped him as well by extending my hand out and grabbing his arm to pick him up. I did it successfully, and he sat upright in the middle of us all.
This is what we were originally trying to do,
he said, still sounding like himself. Oh! Mrs. Stone exclaimed.
So we can tell the difference by your voice whenever you gain access to her human body.
Damien noted.
Yes. Then when any other human comes around while he is in it, they will see and hear me. It's a little freaky to think about, but that is what happens. So, Dad said that because you have a demon body, it allows you to switch like this. But why do you have it to begin with? How did you obtain it? I gained a demon spirit when I got paired with Darius. That is what makes me able to walk and interact within the demon world. However, when it comes to obtaining this demon form...
Succubus.
Darius said, intruding on my sentence.
Succubus?
Damien questioned.
It's the proper term for a female demon.
And how would you know that?
Just by listening to the people around me when I first walked through hell, I caught on.
The point is,
I said, interrupting this downward conversation.
The reason I gained this form was because Satan grew impatient and forced it to be created. That way he could tell the difference between us when he interacts with us. What do you mean by that? Are you telling me you have encountered the devil more than once?
Unfortunately, yes. For the past year, we have had to deal with his abrupt appearances and torture. Because of the past I have with him, he involves Abby. All of this chaos that we have encountered has been because of me. Her demon spirit and vessel were bestowed upon her because of me. And I hope you know, Abby, that I still feel awful about all of it. If I could reverse any of it and have you continue life normally, I most certainly would.
I know, Darius. It's okay. You couldn't help any of it. Don't blame yourself for things you couldn't control.
After my statement, he smiled briefly at me again, feeling relieved that I didn't hate him for all the things that have happened.
Can I interrupt and say something?
Damien asked, grabbing a hold of my hand again. I turned back to him and nodded my head to allow him to do so.
I know this is unusual and out of the ordinary, you having some sort of hellish figure. However, I just want you to know that you are very beautiful, just like in your human body. I especially love your wings. They're very soft.
As I peered at my boyfriend saying that, I realized that my wing itself somehow wrapped around him at some point. The different shades and tints of ocean blue glimmered in the light, while the dark blue bone structure created an outline. He looked secured and innocent as his left hand had gently grabbed the edge of my wing to have it cling to his skin, enclosing him and creating background against his body. Realizing all of that, I decided to ask my question.
Did I somehow wrap my wing around you? Or did you do that? The wing brushed up against me because of how big it is, so I just grew curious and decided to touch it while you were talking.
At his honesty, I couldn't help but smile. It was like he was a young child again, precious and innocent. He was seeming to disregard the fact that I looked like a hellspawn. Actually, it appeared that he was handling all of this news better than what I anticipated. The fact that his father became a demon still sat heavy on him, yet he embraced the reality better than I did. So with curiosity and cheerfulness, I had to ask him another question.
How are you so calm about all of this? Your girlfriend is a demon.
Succubus.
Yeah. Would you let me talk, you precise identity Nazi?
I stated, pointing at Darius. His eyes widened slightly, but a smile grew on his face as a chuckle escaped his mouth, ensuring that he would finally be quiet and let me talk.
I'm literally sitting here in a demon spirit while your father is within my actual body. How can you sit here and not show a bit of concern? Well, let's first start off by saying that I really don't have a religious factor to worry about like you did. Second, I find all of this more interesting than concerning. And finally, I somehow have my dad back. Even though he isn't human anymore, he is still somehow here and partnered with my partner, a person that I see often. I have nothing to worry about.
You'll have nothing to fear, but Abby and I need to be careful.
My demon said, chiming in on the conversation. What do you mean, honey? Nala asked.
There are a couple of things we need to be aware of. One, as we all have noticed, there are power malfunctions that I am having that will affect everyone. Yet depending on what unfolds also, Abby may have the same problem if she is in her demon spirit.
Abby has powers too? Yes, but I don't use them as much. I'm also not in this form as frequently. Which in that case, Darius, can I please have my body back now?
He nodded his head in agreement and extended his arm out so we could switch. Once I was back within my own body, I stared back at Darius sitting next to his son. He peered at his wife for a moment, but then looked back to Damien. With a smile on his face, he wrapped him in a side hug and kissed his head. The widest smile appeared on my boyfriend's face. He was overjoyed to be within the moment, being next to his dad and allowed to feel consoled by his role model. Yet before the time got too far away, my protector demon faced us women again and spoke.
The second thing we need to be aware of is the intruder that keeps interfering with our lives.
Immediately at his remark, a feeling of panic rose in my chest. I knew exactly who he was talking about, and I didn't even think about that until now. However, before I could say anything, He spoke again.
If he ever tries to visit us while we are here, we need to keep him away from Nala and Damien.
Do you mean Satan?
Damien said, looking up at his dad's face.
Regrettably, yes. He is constantly checking in on us and trying to fish for answers. He's cunning, and will unleash his wrath if ever threatened. I don't want to see anyone get hurt.
We all nodded our heads in acknowledgement, coming to terms with this unpleasing circumstance. However, it didn't take us long to move on and spend the time talking about another subject.
If I may ask, what powers do you two have?
Damien asked. Well, not including my wings, I have a force field, electricity, and intangibility. That was how I was able to give Darius a—
Abby!
Nala exclaimed with shock.
We don't need to talk about that.
Immediately afterwards, I started to feel my face flush as she semi-yelled at me. Yet I totally understood why. Regardless of that, though, I looked back at my demon to see a slight face of concern. It didn't take me long to realize he knew I felt awful. My mind had also forgotten that Damien didn't know about the little session his parents had. That just made me feel worse about what I was about to say, so I quickly apologized. I'm sorry, Mrs. Stone. I didn't mean to upset you.
Abby, you don't need to apologize for speaking the truth.
But what about our privacy, Darius? I don't think that should be something that is shared with the kids.
Upon her remark, he unwrapped his arm from around his son and stared at his wife intently, his eyes showing a certain sternness while he held a blank expression. The way he was displaying himself seemed almost new to me. I couldn't tell if he was getting aggressive, protective, or demanding. But something within me was saying he was going to speak out about his feelings.
Sweetheart, there is no such thing as privacy when it comes to that situation. She heard a thought of mine amplify within her head. She already knew what was happening between us. That is why she used her intangibility to help us out. Because of the bond between her and I, that privacy is out the window.
But Darius...
But nothing. It happened, it's done, and there is nothing any of us can do to change that. Are you starting to regret what we did?
No, absolutely not.
Then be proud, and don't scold my protector child about it. We kissed, we touched, we made love. I don't care if they know about it or not.
The air was full of tension, yet it was tension of embarrassment instead of anger. For as I peered back at Damien's mom, her cheeks were almost as red as Darius's skin. I understood why she wouldn't want anyone announcing what they did in the bedroom. I wouldn't like it either if Damien did the same. I honestly made a mistake by trying to explain my power. So instead of sitting in this awkward silence and have Miss Stone dwell in her unease, I decided to move the conversation along once more. To get back to the original subject of discussion, my protector demon has more powers than I do. But the basic ones he has is the force field, psychokinesis, shapeshifting...
You can shapeshift?
Damien yelled with excitement. Darius's eyes widened while his mouth opened slightly. Yes, he can. But the big shocker here is that you have interacted with him before within one of his forms.
Really? Please show me. I want to know.
I'm not sure if that's a really good idea.
Come on, Dad, please. I want to know which form was yours. I want to know when I interacted with you.
As Damien stared up at his dad, practically having puppy dog eyes, the father could not deny his son's request. With a smile, my demon stood up from his spot and stepped out of our sitting circle. Eventually, he was able to close his eyes and concentrate on what he was shifting into. Within a matter of seconds, the red transforming smoke appeared and circled his body until he was done changing. Once the smoke disappeared, Damien and Nala stood up in shock.
Darla!
They both cried. They instantly ran to the new female in the room and started to examine her from head to toe.
That explains why you seemed more mature than other young adults.
I should have known just by the name you have chosen for that form.
You couldn't have, though. You didn't know about this alternate universe until today. You would have been clueless if it weren't for discovering each other.
Once he had shown off the form enough, he took another step back and quickly changed to himself again. Yet instead of interacting with his wife and son, he walked over to me again and extended his hand down to help me up.
We won't be able to tell you everything about ourselves or our partnership within one day, but we have given you major details that you needed to know in order to understand the situation. More information will come along, I'm sure, but for now, I think we need to celebrate. Not just about us being brought back together by some greater means. We also need to congratulate a certain graduate within the room.
He said, giving me a side hug as well.
We don't need to celebrate my graduation yet,
I said, trying to protest.
I'm having a party in July. We can celebrate then. Bringing your family together again is way more important than that.
But it still involves you. Plus, I already bought you a cake to have your own little party for your graduation. So you can't deny the pleasantries or fun that will follow.
You have done so much for us already. Let us do something nice for you.
Looking at the audience in the room, they all shared the same expressions, smiles and joy. They all also seemed determined to celebrate and have a good time. So, knowing that I was surrounded by an amazing second family, I nodded my head and accepted everything for the rest of the night. As time went on, we stayed gathered up and enjoyed each other's company. We talked for a few hours about multiple different topics, but when it came to about dinner time, we all helped make the meal. Then we all sat as a family. Darius sitting next to his wife and son, while I sat at the opposite end as him. The protector demon that I was interacting with now had a shift in emotion. He was more joyous and expressed his emotions even more. His facial expressions were even more genuine while he filled the air with his laughter. Of course, when they pulled out the cake, pictures were taken and more jokes were played. Nala actually took a slice of it and slammed it into Darius's face. Yet, with a messy face, he kissed her out of love and enjoyment. I was physically seeing that physical and emotional bond that he always talked about having with his wife, and viewing his love blossoming once more into what he had made me happy. So I basked in it, knowing that he was finally relieved of his regrets. For the rest of the evening after dinner, we played a family board game and finished the night at about 10:30 p.m. Once everybody started to wind down and grow tired, we all gave out hugs and kisses before we went our separate ways. Darius and Nala heading to their bedroom, while Damien and I went downstairs to his. We did a little bit of fooling around after that by ourselves, if you get what I mean. It just kind of escalated that way. However, as we finished and were exhausted, we fell asleep within each other's arms, treasuring the day.
This has been Chapter 25, Basic Understanding, from the book The Forbidden Truth. Tune in to the next video for Chapter 26. Thank you for listening.